our keynote speaker for this event. Ulla Elizabeth Müller is the country representative for the United Nations Population Fund, a lifelong advocate for human rights, in particular the rights of women and girls. She's worked and lived more than 25 years in sub-Saharan Africa and can see the progress that is made. She believes that access to sexual and reproductive health services, including access to family planning, is central to women empowerment and to reaching the SDGs. When every adolescent girl and adult woman can make their own choices, they can realize their full potential. During her career, she has held high-level leadership positions, including being an associate partner in Nordic Consulting Group, president and CEO of and Gender Health Regional Director, East and Southern Africa in Marie Stopes International, as well as CEO of Jua Group. Ms. Müller holds a MSc in Economics and Business Administration and a Master in Human Rights and Democracy. Round of applause for our keynote speaker this afternoon, Ms. Ulla Elizabeth Müller. Thank you very much for joining us. She's going to talk about the importance of demographic, population, and development information to national planning and development. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Good afternoon, I think it is by now. And please, Rotimi, allow me to stand on the protocol. It always takes a lot of our time when we go through these long lists. So, Rotimi, please give me that permission. And I hope you will grant me the same permission in the room. In Denmark, we would say, no one mentioned, no one is forgotten. I am really pleased to be here today, and I was thinking, as I was listening to both to Rotimi's speech, but also to my colleague from UNDP, what is left for me to say? Because I think it's all been said, but I'll try and see if I can spend some time here putting everything into perspective and linking some really just very practical hands-on information about the census that we will be conducting in 2023 together with the Population Commission and the Bureau of Statistics, and linking it up to the bigger picture on why this is so important. So let me start by maybe talking a little bit about why we do need this information. I think a lot has been said about how to use it, but why do we really need to use it? It's because data, population data, is critical for decision-making to drive sustainable development and long-term development. It's critical because it enables us to monitor achievements of subnational, national, and global level data. If we have data, we have an accountability framework for what it is we want to achieve. When we have data, we can hold governments and ourselves accountable to the commitments and pledges that we have made. Data also supports effective formulation of policies. It is the backbone of good governance. It is the backbone of good planning. It is critical when we talk about crisis prevention. We heard a lot about it earlier, that if we look at the data, we can actually see where we can expect the next crisis. That can be security crisis, humanitarian crisis, but it can actually also just be natural disasters. If we know there's going to be flooding, and we do know that if we use our data available for us for all the satellite images, if we have the right population data, we know what population is going to be affected, and we can actually go in and mitigate the risk for those people. It allows us, as I said, to track the progress to the SDGs. And I don't know if any of you have thought about what is the Nigerian progress towards the SDGs. I'm sure my colleague from UNDP has done that. We are only on track in Nigeria for one development goal. Do you know which one it is? Partnerships, goal 17. Which means that we've been very good at forging strong partnerships, both at the UN level and civil society, on how we want to do this, because we know we can only achieve the SDGs if we work together. But all the other SDGs, Nigeria is off track. And that is the SDGs that determines the welfare of the country. So, the census, what is it we can expect from the census? I'm trying just to give you an idea of what my thinking is. So my thinking is that it provides accurate, reliable, and timely data for development. It gives us a tool for planning, and it also enables us to think about especially basic services, whether education or health, where to focus. So the questionnaire that's been developed for the Nigerian 2023 census is really advanced, and it comprises 100 questions that really takes a deep dive into the living conditions and the terms of the populations of Nigeria. It will allow us to generate really good data about people, about their needs, and again about, age, educational background, because everything we've heard here today, and I mean no disrespect, because I know Rotimi and I discussed that earlier, every number we have put forward today is based on an estimate. It has been almost 2 decades since Nigeria took stock of its population. So how do you then make decisions about logistics? How do you know where the road network is going to go? How do you know where the people who need to be connected to the grid, where do they live? Where do you build your hospitals? Where do you need your doctors to go? Where do you need your teachers to go? If we don't know where people live and what is the composition of the society, because there may be LGAs out there where everyone are elderly, so maybe that's not where you prioritize your primary school, but you definitely prioritize your healthcare center. So how do we put all of this together? That is what this census is going to bring. And I'd like to take this opportunity to call on the politicians, on all the candidates running, to take this as an opportunity to transform Nigeria. Let us not make this about traditions and cultures and religion and money. Because if we do that, we're going to fail the population. Because this is about the welfare and the well-being of a great nation who is on track to be the 3rd most populous country in the world by 2050. So what do we expect? I want to just tell you a little bit about what you can expect from this census. It is a census of international standards and qualities. And that is the obligation of UNFPA to ensure that we work with NPC to provide exactly that technical advice that safeguards the integrity of the census. This means, as you can see here, we have put in place a 5-tier quality assurance system. And that goes from everything from how we collate the data to how it's being stored and how it's being used. One of the unique things about this census is some of you may remember that, the big issues that always comes up in census is how many times is it touched by human hand before we look at it. This will not be touched by human hand. It's going to be real time, and it's going to go straight up into a cloud that would be protected by UNFPA. And when we look at the data, it will not have been touched at all the different stages. So we will have a complete data set that is collected in real time. We're going to come out with a lot of user-friendly products where we will try to explain what, in different sectors, all of this looks like. I need to look at my keynotes here. The automation of key processes. One of the things that has been really challenging in past censuses is that recruitment has been flawed. Part of it because of nepotism, favoritism, corruption, as we just heard from our UNDP colleague. So all of these processes have been put into really solid validation of candidates as we've started to recruit. We have to validate exams, documents, diplomas, everything to make sure that we're getting the right people and people who can read and write, because they do need to be able to go through all the questionnaires. A lot of training has also been done this way. We're going to have 1.2 million enumerators almost. We cannot have everyone in a classroom. So a lot of this has been done using technology. We are building the capacity of the Population Commission to actually use and generate the data. And we forged a very strong relationship with the National Bureau of Statistics, bearing in mind that ultimately they have to validate the outcome of the census. So progress. And this is important for everyone in this room who's going to be reporting about information for development. So we have established now with the Population Commission in their headquarters what we call a situation room. In that situation room, you have a call center. So as the census and the enumeration goes on, if there are any challenges, there's a call center they can call into, and it will be recorded and monitored. So we know what are the questions, and we will know if they are correctly addressed. There's an enumeration dashboard in real time. A dashboard that means that we can sit in that room and we can monitor all the different LGAs as the enumeration goes on. And the real beauty of this census is because of the hybrid technology, and this is in place and has been tested in the trial census, each of the tablets that's going to be used are going to be geo-fenced. This means that if you want to count any given structure and you are not at that structure, a message will go off in the situation room saying something is wrong here because he cannot enumerate that building, he is not close to it. And the tablet will default. And that means we can send an observer in and say, could you just go and check this particular location? Because something is not right. That is really a game changer, because that means you cannot cheat. In this census, you also have to be seen to be counted. So across the country, we're going to have 2 enumerators, a man and a woman, so that when you come to a household where a man cannot enter to meet the female population, there will be a female enumerator who can go into the building in respect for the culture and tradition to make sure that every woman and every child is counted too. It's a huge undertaking, and I must commend the Population Commission for being really dedicated and focused as we do this. We've talked a lot about the challenges, but I also want to just recommend, or commend, I think is the right word, the Nigerian Population Commission, and flagging this because that leads to the second half of what I'm going to be talking about, is that Nigeria is actually the first country who have that geofencing linked into the census tools. And that is a tool that's developed by young Nigerian. And they've just been in the States to get that. So that's about the potential you have in this country. Yeah. It's the first one off, and it's going to be a game changer for censuses going forward. So as I said, this one I will read. This census will be transformational for Nigeria if you decide to use the data. It will be the first fully digital census that gives us accurate, high-quality data. It's going to be fully transparent because there will be a footprint for everything that's being done. That means we will have accountability to the numbers. The questionnaires are embedded in the SDGs. And this means that when we have the outcome, we can actually link it to the SDGs. And therefore, we can begin to monitor progress. The accountability framework will be there. And that's going to be a huge achievement that can change the trajectory of this great nation. And then I'm going to say, why is all this important? So please allow me to take us back just a little bit on this one. Let's explore a little bit why this is important and how it links to today's theme. Because I think we sometimes forget when we talk about information that access to information is actually a human right. It is embedded in human rights conventional frameworks. And that means that everyone, every citizen, anywhere in the world, has a right to demand accurate, claim accurate information from the journalists, from the governments, from key partners. We have a right to make informed decisions. And simply speaking, information is just knowledge, intelligence, data, news that's been gathered for the use of opinion making, decision making, thinking, formative thinking, on how we want to continue our walks in lives. And the United Nations General Assembly instituted the World Development Information Day in 1972, as we heard earlier. And the purpose is, to draw attention to how important it is to use information to drive development. There's a need to strengthen international cooperation, and that can only be done if we use information. When we talk about the challenges to development, only information can help us find ways to mitigate those challenges and change the trajectory. I think in today's world, the point about information for development is a reminder today, is a reminder to all of us about the need for global solidarity and peace to achieve global development and the SDGs. In the wake of COVID-19, I also think that the theme of the World Development Information Day lecture today, the SDG 10, reducing inequality within and amongst countries, is so very apt. The pandemic clearly showed us that inequalities between nations were great. And there has been a lot of focus on that, rightfully so. But it also showed us that inequalities within countries are equally great and equally challenging. In Nigeria, when vaccines were rolled out, when we were looking for testing, it was not everyone who had equal access to vaccines. It was not everyone who had equal access to treatment. It was not everyone who had equal access to healthcare. The pandemic really showed the world that we need to think differently about how we construct our societies. And we can only do that if we use population data to make those decisions. So when we talk about population data and the census here in Nigeria, what it will tell us is who are the most vulnerable people, where do they live, and how many are they? I fear there may be many more than what we have heard today. But we will know that when we have done the census. And this, I'm going to come back and do some repetition, but I'm doing that because I think it's really important that we understand this. We will only deliver the Sustainable Development Goals if we embrace the need to reduce inequalities within states and between states. Therefore, the importance of demographic population and development information to national planning and development cannot be overemphasized. And this is where the press becomes critical. Because once we have the data, you're going to be a key partner in holding government accountable to using the data for decision making. Quality data and statistics are required. It's the bedrock of Nigeria's socio-economic development. The information is what substantiates key national policies, as I said earlier. It is the backbone of good decision making. Imagine if Nigeria could look different if it had really good information available for some of the decisions that has been made. I think the question that was asked in the opening remarks and setting the scene about what were they thinking? Well, maybe they were thinking, but decisions were maybe made in blind because we don't know what the population looks like. So it is an opportunity to get us back on track. An estimated 216 million people population growth of 3.2%. That means you double your population in 22 years. When you think about that, and you think about the data we just saw, and you think about the inequalities, the gender inequalities, I would like to add some data to that, to those statistics. Maternal mortality in Nigeria is 514. It's one of the highest in the world. If we go to the northwest, it is 1,932 is the estimate. That takes it very, very high in the world. In the northeast, it's 1,549. So with the fertility rate in this country, how many children are orphaned every time a mother dies? And why is that a problem? And this is about, again, looking at the data you have. What do we know about a child's education? That the better educated the mother is, the better educated her child will be. And if the mother is not there, the child is less likely to be enrolled in education, especially the girl child. That speaks to equality and it speaks to development. When it comes to health, and I'm sorry, I know I have a time issue here, but these are really important things. Recent studies showed that in Nigeria, only 11% of Nigerian women, pay attention here, only 11% of Nigerian women feel empowered to make their own decisions about whether they can see a doctor. That means that 89% of Nigerian women feels that they need to ask permission if they don't feel well to go and see a doctor. That is just a very high number. I don't know how else to describe it. That has to change. Because if she doesn't feel she can do that, she can also not take her girl child to see a doctor. When she cannot do that, we have too many home deliveries in Nigeria. And that is one of the key drivers for the high maternal mortality. Another key driver is the lack of possibilities to space the number of children you want to have. A Nigerian woman is not empowered to make her own decisions about her own body. Her bodily autonomy, which is a human right, is violated on a daily basis. And if we want to bring prosperity and development to Nigeria, that has to change. And then, of course, we have the young people. And that is maybe the most important thing we need to change. We need to change how we think about young people. We need to stop thinking that young people cannot be leaders. We need to stop thinking that just because you are young, you cannot meaningfully contribute. And we need to stop paying lip service to listening to young people and then continuing the way that we've always done. And why is this linked to demographics? It's linked to demographics because people between 10 and 24 years of age is 31% of Nigeria's population. 70% of your population is under 30. 70%. Does anyone want to guess how much that is when you are 216 million? These are the future. And this is a lot of potential for Nigeria that we need to figure out how to use. So this figure could give us hope and comfort. But if we do not learn how to create opportunities and support young people and their creativity and their energy, all hopes of achieving a demographic dividend will fade in the horizon. And also, at the same time, the risk of failure in Nigeria increases. And if we don't do that, Nigeria will lose out. And it all comes back to looking and understanding the consequences of this data. 70% under 30, and you saw earlier how many are educated. How are you gonna run and govern a country if the next generation cannot read and write? How are you gonna ensure the continued transition into democracy if the future generation, if more than half, cannot read and write? This is about using the data available to us. I'm almost done. 81%, 116 million of the population, is female, youth, or children. Women are 49.2% of the population, and they are underrepresented. In the last election cycle, the number of women in parliament and local government decreased from 6.9% to 4.4%. How does that happen in a country like Nigeria? And what are the consequences? About 4.5 million are 65 or above 65 years of age. So that's an estimated 10.3 million. 5% are, sorry, let me get the numbers right. That number is expected to increase to 25.3 million in 2050, where the population will be 400 million. People that are disabled is 3.3%. That is 3.3 million people. And the interest of the elderly, of women, and people with disability is not addressed adequately in the parliament. It has to change. Again, understanding the numbers. So this is in large part why the 2023 census is so important. Because we do need that data to change Nigeria. Imagine Nigeria is the plan that has just been launched by the government. So I'm challenging this room. Imagine a Nigeria that is equal, where everyone has a voice, everyone is heard, and everyone has access to information and decision making. Imagine what this mighty country would look like if we could get to that point. Imagine what it would look like if we used the data we have available to drive decision making around the development of this country. Where to invest. Just think about it. Because when we do that, we ensure that no single person is left behind or not accounted for. So in conclusion, we believe in UNFPA, that equality is central. We also believe that bodily autonomy and access to reproductive rights, which is also very clearly formulated by the current Nigerian government, is critical to development. So the high maternal mortality, the low contraceptive prevalence rate is not helping progress to development. We believe in UNFPA that we have an obligation to end preventable maternal deaths. No woman should die giving birth, and no child should grow up without their mother for causes that we can prevent. We also believe that any woman who wants to space her children should have the right to do so, because when she does that, the disposable income in families changes. You plan better, get healthier lives, and the child is more likely to get nutritious, adequate food, and it also contributes to minimizing stunting. And then we do believe that we should end all forms of gender-based violence, and that includes child marriage and female genital mutilation, because it impacts negatively on Nigeria's development. And for all these things, the census data provides an accountability framework that we can work from. We believe in the SDGs, but we also believe strongly that they will not be delivered if we do not get to equality. And a woman's health is critical to that. So let us use this data that comes out of the census to drive the Sustainable Development Goals, but also deliver a Nigeria where every childbirth is safe so the mother survives. A Nigeria where every child is wanted and therefore also will be able to get that education because the family has planned for it. And a Nigeria where every young person's potential is fulfilled because we've made the right decisions. When we do that, we safeguard the future of Nigeria. We build a Nigeria that can take its place as the third most populous nation in the world and contribute significantly to a world where no one is left behind. Thank you.